Willie.
We are also watching state elections and the upcoming census. Ohio postponed its primary set for today over coronavirus fears. But could this happen as well for the 2020 census? The virus raising concerns that some undercounted populations could be further underrepresented in the once-a-decade head count. So far, the pandemic has had an impact within the Census Bureau. The mobile questionnaire assistance program has been delayed, and training for field staff has been moved online. The Bureau also is asking nursing homes, dorms, and prisons to respond to the census online. While the count has launched for most of America this week, the Bureau has not ruled out extending the count past the end of July, when it was scheduled to end, and Bureau officials will make a decision after reviewing response rates. Just this past Sunday, a person who works in the Census Bureau tested positive for the virus. Joining us now, President and CEO of the National Urban League and the former mayor of the great city of New Orleans, Mark Morial. Mr.
Thanks,
Mayor,
Willie.
great to see you.
Great, good to be with you.
Want to talk to you about the impact this is having where you live, but also let's focus in first on the census. We know that these communities already are underrepresented. This could go a long way to further underrepresenting them if door knockers can't get to the doors to count all these people in those communities.
This coronavirus has complicated the execution of this census in a number of ways. And I think it's fairly certain that the census, the time period for the census, is going to have to be extended. And I think we need to get, and I hope the Census Bureau will get in front of that. Here are the problems. Number one, the counting of students has now been imperiled because they're no longer going to be in their dorms. The counting of anyone in group quarters, nursing homes, assisted living centers, halfway houses, those that live in correctional facilities, is also imperiled because of the coronavirus. Secondly, the entire enumeration effort, which is the last step in the census, where the enumerators or the census officials go out and knock on doors to people who've not responded online, that could be impacted because they're in the hiring and training phase. So the Inspector General at Census really called the census to task and said, what is your plan to deal with the coronavirus? What I'd like the census to do is to be transparent about it, to indicate that they do have a backup plan. But here's the other thing. Right now, I filled out my census form online last night. The American people can go online if you have broadband connection, if you have computer availability, and fill your form out now. Since many are working from home, many cannot go out. So I would encourage people to do that while at the same time encouraging the census. And we're going to hold them accountable on this because we don't want this to produce an undercount. And they've got to get in front of this.
And you're looking for an extension beyond the July 31st deadline, which I suspect had more gravity to it after the president himself said yesterday this is going to go on until at least July or August. So let's hope they extend the deadline. Let's talk about practical impacts of undercounting. What does it mean to have an urban community be underrepresented?
Any community that's undercounted is going to be robbed of political power for the entire decade of the 20s. City council seats, state legislative seats, congressional seats. They also will not get their fair share of federal and, in many instances, state resources, which are allocated based on population data and population calculations. I was in Orlando about 10 days ago, and they have determined that their 2010 undercount has affected as many as 7,000 to 10,000 early childhood seats that they need in that community, which is indeed a growing community. So I think I'd say to people, this is not a count for a count. This is a count for economic and political power. It's important, and I want to really encourage people to participate, to count their babies, to count their children, to count their mothers, their fathers, their grandmothers, their grandfathers, anyone that lives in a dwelling where they are.
Let's hope the Census Bureau heeds your warning and takes the time it needs to get that count right. As I said, you were the two-term mayor of New Orleans.
Right.
We saw pictures over the weekend of Bourbon Street packed with people again. The police had to move those folks out. What's your sense of the way people of Louisiana are viewing this and what the long-term impact on a city like New Orleans might be?
So
here?
I would say this, Willie, this is important. Mayors and governors have really stepped up to be the first responders and the people to whom people are really looking for leadership in this crisis. And I think Mayor Cantrell in New Orleans, along with a number of other mayors, have taken the steps necessary to execute social distancing. And of course, in New Orleans, that means that a place like the French Quarter, which is a magnet for people, and a place where people go to enjoy themselves, to visit and view culture, as well as many other neighborhoods, people are going to have to remain inside. And this is going to be difficult for us as a nation, but we've got to heed the public health authorities right now. We've got to understand that this is essential. My employees here in New York for the National Urban League, we're all on a work-from-home protocol. We've got 2,000 employees across the nation. Our local leaders are making similar decisions, but there's going to be an impact that could have in our ability to deliver services as we work to respond to the large number of Americans who are going to find themselves without a paycheck, who are going to find themselves out of work. And that hardship, that economic hardship, in addition to the health challenges we face, has to be top of mind for the Congress, the president, because they've got to respond.
Those are all small businesses throwing those parties down on Bourbon Street.
Small businesses and hourly employees, dishwashers, waiters, bartenders, cooks, and the others. They work paycheck to paycheck, and any recovery plan has to be bottoms up and provide relief for those workers.
Mr. Mayor, Gene Robinson has a question for you. Gene?
Yeah, Mark, one question I've had the last few days I haven't been able to get an answer is anything being done in terms of the coronavirus with the populations in public housing, which is a place where in many cases people live close together. I haven't heard of the federal government doing anything in particular to test and potentially isolate people in public housing so that we don't become centers of infection. Are you aware of anything that's being done, and what do you think should be done?
I am not, Gene. It's an excellent question because it points to yet another part of our communities where people live closely together. In public housing, in many instances, they're multi-family units. And this is where the HUD secretary should be on the phone with public housing leaders across the nation, offering guidance to respond to this. Now, I'll tell you a concern I have relative to not only public housing residents, but certainly many, many others, and that is when the testing becomes generally available, which I think is what we're all hoping and we're all waiting on. The concern is whether people in public housing, people in communities, urban communities, are going to be the last to be tested because the public health infrastructure isn't what it ought to be. So it's important, I think, as Congress considers a recovery plan, as public health authorities develop their plans, that they understand that this has got to be an equitable distribution of testing and treatment resources.
All right. Mayor Mark Morial, we appreciate your time as always. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks,
Good to
Willie.
see you. Mika?
All right, and Eugene Robinson, thank you as well. Still ahead, from small businesses to major players on the stock market, coronavirus tests the strength of the U.S. economy in a big way. We'll take a closer look at the threat and the new guidelines as the president admits for the first time that the U.S. may be headed for recession.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.